The needle glided through the silk like a secret too precious to speak aloud. 6 months of stolen moments, midnight oil burned, fingers pricked raw every seed, pearl-stitched with prayers for my daughter Emily's wedding day. The ivory silk charmeuse had cost me half a month's rent, but what was money compared to the way the fabric pooled like liquid moonlight across my kitchen table? My hands, now lined with 62 years of life, moved slower than when I'd sewn my own wedding gown in '83, but these stitches carried the weight of every prom dress, hemmed every tear-stained blouse, mended after my husband's sudden death. This wasn't just a dress. It was the armor I'd crafted for Emily to face the world without apologies. The morning sun blazed through my apartment windows as I wrapped the gown in tissue paper, the scent of lavender sachets, a trick I'd learned from Grandma Rose clinging to the folds. My reflection in the hallway mirror showed a woman who'd traded spa days for second shifts, but my spine was straight. Today, Emily would see what love looked like when threaded through every French seam. The Waldorf Astoria loomed ahead, its gilded doors swallowing guests whole. Emily's future mother-in-law, Victoria Kensington, a woman who pronounced budget like a bacterial infection, had chosen the venue. When I'd offered to handle the bridesmaids' bouquets, she'd patted my wrist with her diamond-crusted hand. "Darling, we've hired a floral sculptor from Paris, but do keep the receipt for your craft store petals." The suite smelled of imported roses and insecurity. A team of professionals orbit Emily like satellites, a makeup artist airbrushing away her freckles, the ones she'd inherited from her father, a hairstylist wielding extensions like weapons. My girl sat motionless, a mannequin in a sea of silk robes. Mom. Emily's voice was a tightrope walk between hope and resignation. The photographer needs the dress now. I unzipped the garment bag, revealing the bodice's hidden surprise, a pocket sewn near the heart holding the last photo of her dad. "For when you need him close," I whispered. Victoria's gasp cut through the room. "That vintage lace will clash with the cathedral train." Emily's fingers brushed the pocket, her eyes welling. Then, miracle of miracles, she laughed. "Sorry, Victoria. This stays. Mom's stitching is the only thing holding me together today." The room froze. In that moment, my needle-worn hands felt mightier than all the checkbooks in Manhattan. The moment I unzipped the garment bag, the silk spilled out like a whispered confession. Every stitch, every pearl, every midnight hour I'd sacrificed, laid bare under the chandelier's cruel glare. Victoria Kensington's manicured hand flew to her throat. "Oh," she said, the single syllable dripping with pity. "It's charming." Behind her, the wedding planner muttered into her headset, "We'll need the backup gown steamed immediately." Emily's face flickered just for a second with something like guilt. "Mom, the lace is beautiful, but—" Her fingers plucked at the designer gown hanging nearby, its price tag still dangling like a noose. "The photographer said this one photographs better in natural light." I could almost hear the echo of her 12-year-old voice twirling in a homemade Halloween costume, giggling, "Mom, you're magic with a needle." Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. As I folded my rejected creation, a seamstress from the hotel's staff, a woman with kind eyes and a name tag reading Lupe, lingered near the door. When Victoria turned to bark orders at the florist, Lupe slipped me a napkin with a phone number scribbled in red lipstick. "My sister owns a bridal boutique in Brooklyn," she whispered. "She'd sell this masterpiece in a heartbeat." The second blow came from an unexpected corner. Emily's fiancé Daniel, who'd been silent until now, suddenly cleared his throat. "Actually, I prefer Aunt Brie's dress." The room froze. He stepped forward, running a hand over the delicate embroidery. "This is the only thing here that feels real." Victoria's face turned the color of spoiled milk. But Emily, my Emily, who used to fall asleep clutching my handmade dolls, shook her head. "Dan, be serious." Her laugh was too sharp, too loud. "We're not getting married in a craft project." The words hung in the air like smoke. That's when I noticed it, the tiny tremor in Daniel's jaw. the way his eyes darted to the door, then back to Emily as if seeing her for the first time. And I knew with a mother's terrible clarity that this wedding wasn't just stealing my daughter, it was erasing her. I zipped the bag with finality. "Keep the receipt for your sculpted roses, Victoria," I said, echoing her earlier jab. "I hear they make lovely landfill decorations." Then I walked out, the weight of the dress in my arms, nothing compared to the weight lifting from my shoulders. Downstairs in the lobby, I dialed Lupe's number. "Tell your sister she's got a sale," I said, "and ask if she needs a new seamstress." The morning sun hit the sidewalk like a spotlight, and for the first time in years, I stood perfectly still, feeling the tectonic plates of my life shift beneath me. Some endings aren't tragedies. They're overdue awakenings. The afternoon light slanted through my kitchen window, gilding the pearls on the bodice like tiny, defiant stars. I traced the spiral pattern, the same one I'd stitched into Emily's first Christmas stocking when she was 3. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, shaking the framed photo of us at Coney Island off the wall. The glass cracked right down the middle, dividing our smiling faces like an omen. Then my phone buzzed. Lupe's sister Rosa had texted, "Come tomorrow, bring the dress, bring your needles. We have work to do." The message included an address in Williamsburg and a winking emoji. I stared at it, my tea going cold. 37 years of grading papers, of packing lunches, of being just a teacher, just a mom, and now this. A lifeline thrown by a stranger who saw value in what my own daughter had rejected. I was halfway to my sewing kit when the doorbell rang. Daniel stood on my porch. His tuxedo rumpled his eyes, bloodshot. "She sent me to get the photo," he said, shifting from foot to foot. "The one in the pocket? Emily says it's bad luck not to have it at the ceremony." I laughed, a real unguarded sound that startled us both. "Tell Emily she's right. But the photo stays with the dress." Daniel's shoulders slumped, and in that moment he looked less like a Kensington and more like the scared kid who'd brought me dandelions the first time he came to dinner. "Mrs. B," he blurted out, "I called off the honeymoon." My breath caught. "The tickets to Bali. I donated them to that veterans charity you like. I'm flying to Colorado instead, to build houses with Habitat for Humanity." He glanced back at his BMW idling at the curb, then dropped his voice. I think I've been pretending to be someone I'm not." The second twist came when he reached into his jacket and pulled out a check 5 figures, signed by Victoria. "For your trouble," he said, making air quotes. But I was thinking, maybe it's seed money. His boyish grin reminded me so much of Emily at 16, begging for driving lessons that my chest ached. Rosa's shop could use an investor who appreciates real craftsmanship. As his taillights disappeared down the street, I realized the cracked photo frame had fallen perfectly, my side upright, Emily's face down in the shadows. I left it that way. Upstairs, my grandmother's antique trunk yawned open, filled with fabric scraps from decades of love and labor. I buried my hands in the rainbow of silks, the textures whispering against my skin like old friends. Tomorrow I'd meet Rosa. Tomorrow I'd begin again. But tonight, I sat at my sewing machine for the first time in years, not making something for someone else. The needle's rhythm was steady, certain, like a heartbeat, like freedom. Somewhere across the East River Orchestra, music swelled as my daughter kissed a man who would never understand the woman who raised her. And here, in this yellow kitchen that smelled of thread and possibility, I finally started sewing my own story. Gloria's fingers hovered over the dress like she was afraid it might vanish. "Mrs. Barnes, this isn't just a dress," she breathed, tracing a pearl-encrusted spiral. "This is museum-quality work." She suddenly rummaged through her oversized tote, pulling out a tablet. "Look." The screen displayed a fashion blog's scathing review of Emily's wedding photos. Brides, Vera Wang, predictable. Mother of the bride's absence, conspicuous. Kensington family reportedly paid photographer extra to minimize rustic elements. The casserole dish clattered onto my counter as Gloria swiped to another tab, a viral Reddit thread titled, "Found the Dress That Broke a Mother's Heart." Someone had leaked backstage photos of my creation next to Emily's designer gown. The comments section was a wildfire. That handmade dress is worth 10 of those soulless designer rags. The pearls alone are heirloom quality. I'd choose this mother's love over cold cash any day. Then came the twist I never expected. Gloria's phone rang. She answered, then mouthed Vogue at me with wide eyes. "Yes, she's right here," she said, suddenly professional. "Mrs. Barnes, it's Vivian Lee from Vogue's American Atelier column. We'd like to feature your dress in our Rejected Masterpieces series with your story." The room tilted. My fingers found the table's edge as Gloria, who I now realized wasn't just a former barista, but a freelance stylist with 50K Instagram followers, grinned like Christmas morning. "Oh, and this came for you." She handed me an embossed envelope. Inside was Daniel's check, now stamped void with a post-it, "Invested it for you. First month's rent at the Williamsburg studio is paid. Rosa." The third twist came when my landline rang again. This time I answered, "Mom." Emily's voice was raw, the champagne glow long gone. I saw the photos online, the ones of your dress." A silence thicker than wedding cake. Then so quiet, I almost missed it. "I didn't know it had Dad's picture in the pocket." Outside, a spring storm rolled in, washing the streets clean. Gloria squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Tell her the truth." So I did. "Emily," I said, staring at the dress that had become my revolution, "neither did I." The lie tasted bitter, but necessary. That hidden pocket held no photo, just the invisible weight of every unsung sacrifice mothers make. Let her search for what was never there. Some lessons can't be stitched. They must be lived. As thunder shook the windows, Gloria opened the enchiladas, filling my house with spices and warmth. "Eat," she ordered. "Tomorrow we shoot your masterpiece for Vogue." The first raindrops hit the pavement like a standing ovation. Ella arrived, still wearing her social worker ID badge, her hands shaking as she touched the dress. "Mrs. Barnes," she whispered, "this is too much." A tear slipped down her cheek when I told her about the hidden pocket now empty but waiting for her own memento. "My grandmother's rosary would fit perfectly," she said, and in that moment I knew this dress had found its true home. Gloria clapped her hands. "We'll need to adjust the hem and take in the waist about an inch." She pulled a measuring tape from her bag with the flourish of a magician. "If we work tonight, we can—" The doorbell cut her off. Standing on my porch was a silver-haired woman in a Chanel suit, her assistant hovering behind her with an iPad. "Brie Barnes," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Margot Vianney Vogue." My knees nearly buckled. "We spoke to Gloria earlier. I flew in from Paris when I saw the photos." Her sharp eyes darted past me to where the dress shimmered under my dining room lights. "Mon Dieu," she breathed. Ella looked ready to faint. Gloria squeezed her hand. "Don't worry," she muttered. "This just got interesting." Margot circled the dress like a hawk, then snapped her fingers. Her assistant produced a contract. "We want this for our September issue. The Rejected Masterpieces spread will feature 10 Couture pieces that were—" She paused, searching for diplomacy. "Underappreciated by their original recipients." I opened my mouth to explain about Ella's wedding, but Gloria cut in. "Perfect timing. We're doing final fittings today for the dress's new owner." She nudged Ella forward. Margot's penciled eyebrows shot up. "You're giving this away—" "Trading," Gloria said smoothly. "Ella's volunteering at Mrs. Barnes' new sewing workshop for foster teens in exchange." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily, I almost believed it myself. The twist came when Margot's assistant gasped. "Ms. Vianney, look—" She turned her screen to show Emily's Instagram update, a close-up of her Vera Wang gown's torn seam, with the caption, "Should have gone with Mom's stitching." The comment section was a bloodbath of support for the unknown seamstress mother. Margot's smile turned razor-sharp. "Darling, we'll need to move quickly. This story just got legs." She tapped the contract. "We'll pay you triple if we can include footage of Ella's wedding, and—" She produced a business card from Rosa's shop. "I hear you're looking for studio space. My nephew owns a loft in Soho. As they left, Gloria high-fived a shell-shocked Ella. "Welcome to show business, kid." That night, as we pinned and stitched, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The text read, "Heard about Vogue. The Kensington Women's Club requests your presence tomorrow at 10. Dress code your terms." I showed Gloria, who nearly swallowed a pin. "Holy shit," she breathed. "You're about to become the most famous mother-in-law in Manhattan." Outside, a car backfired, or maybe it was the sound of my old life exploding. Either way, the stitches in my hands suddenly felt like destiny. Ella spun slowly before the mirror, the dress catching the afternoon light like liquid gold. "Aunt Brie," she whispered. "I feel like Cinderella if Cinderella had student loans and a 401k. We laughed until Gloria's phone started pinging like a slot machine. Guys," Gloria turned her screen toward us. Her Instagram post had exploded. 500 likes, then $1,000. Comments poured in. "This is the dress that bride rejected. Who is this genius seamstress?" Then the kicker, a tagged comment from Joy Cavuto official. "This construction is flawless. Who made this? DM me." Gloria's jaw dropped. "That's Joy Cavuto, like the Joy Cavuto. Project Runway winner, CFDA nominee." The room tilted. Ella clutched the dress's skirt like she might float away. "Aunt Brie, your phone." It was ringing. Unknown number. I answered to hear a crisp British accent. "Brie Barnes. This is Oliver Chen from the New York Times Style section. We're doing a feature on unsung American artisans, and..." Then came the twist that changed everything. My doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, I saw Emily standing there, no makeup, wearing yoga pants, her wedding manicure chipped. She held a familiar photo frame, the cracked one from my wall. I opened the door. Emily thrust the frame at me, her voice raw. "I went through every inch of that Vera Wang dress looking for Dad's picture. It wasn't there." Her eyes flicked past me to where Ella stood in her dress. "Because you never put one in, did you?" Silence stretched like fabric on a bias cut. Gloria grabbed Ella's arm. "We'll be in the kitchen," she muttered, dragging her away. Emily's hands trembled. "That pocket was empty because you wanted me to feel the absence, just like you've felt it every day since Dad died." Tears streaked her face. "Mom, I'm so sorry. The dam broke. 23 years of single motherhood, of bandaged knees, and college applications, of watching my daughter become a stranger. It all came rushing out. You threw away more than a dress, Emily. You threw away us." Outside, a delivery truck pulled up. The driver carried a massive bouquet of peonies, Emily's favorite since she was 6. The card read, "Returning what's yours, Daniel." Emily wiped her eyes. "He left me at the airport, said he couldn't marry someone who'd treat their mother like that." She touched the dress's empty pocket. "Can we start over?" In the kitchen, Gloria's phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. Joy Cavuto had just sent a $5,000 deposit for a custom gown. Ella whooped. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. "Take off those ridiculous eyelashes," I said. "Then we'll talk." As Emily rushed to the bathroom, I picked up the cracked photo frame. The glass had broken clean down the middle, but now both our faces were visible. Maybe some things like French seams were stronger for having been torn apart first. The caller ID showed a New York number I didn't recognize. "Brie Barnes." A woman's voice asked, crisp, with the efficiency of someone who billed by the hour. "This is Lydia Shaw from Shaw & Carter Creative Agency. We represent Joy Cavuto." My pencil snapped in half. "Joy saw Ella's photos and wants to feature your work in her upcoming Hidden Hands exhibition at the Museum of Arts and Design. She's also interested in collaborating on a capsule collection if you're available." Gloria, who'd been pretending not to eavesdrop, dropped the stack of fabric swatches she was holding. The twist came when Lydia added, "There's one condition: we need the original dress, the one your daughter rejected." Silence stretched across the kitchen. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. My throat tightened. "That dress is promised to Ella." "We'll pay triple its value," Lydia said smoothly. "Enough to commission something even more spectacular for your niece." Through the window, I saw Emily's car pull into the driveway unannounced for the second time this week. She carried 2 coffee cups and what looked suspiciously like a peace offering from the bakery I'd loved since she was in pigtails. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. "Take the meeting," she whispered, "but keep the dress for Ella. Some things aren't for sale." Emily entered without knocking her designer sunglasses, hiding what I suspected were dark circles. "Mom, She froze when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" Lydia's voice still chirped from the phone. "This could be 6 figures, Mrs. Barnes. Life-changing money." Emily's face went pale. She set down the coffees and reached for my hand, the first voluntary contact she'd initiated in years. "Whatever it is," she said quietly, "say yes. You deserve this." The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter, who'd once rejected my craftsmanship, was now urging me to capitalize on it. I took a deep breath. "Lydia, I'll do the exhibition, but Ella keeps the dress." Emily's eyebrows shot up. "And tell Joy I'd love to collaborate on one condition." Gloria held her breath. "I want my daughter in the front row at the opening." Emily's coffee cup hit the floor. As the dark liquid spread across the tiles like spilled ink, something between us shifted, not healed, but beginning to mend. Later, as Gloria and I pored over fabric samples for Joy's collection, Emily quietly picked up a needle and began sorting my threads by color, just like she'd done as a little girl. The sight of her hands, so like mine but unmarked by time, working beside me again felt like the most unexpected masterpiece of all. Outside, Mrs. Patterson walked her dog past our house for the second time that day. This time she paused to admire the new sign on my lawn, Barnes & Cober Custom Couture Appointments Only. Her double take was almost as satisfying as the needle in my hand, stitching together the frayed edges of my future. The words synthetic blends hung between us like a bad odor. I could almost hear Victoria Kensington's voice whispering through my daughter's mouth. "That's an interesting idea, Emily," I said, slowly watching Gloria across the room making frantic throat-cutting gestures. "But I don't think polyester would hold up to the techniques I use." Emily's sigh crackled through the phone. "Mom, be reasonable. No one expects couture quality from a retired teacher." I finished my fingers tracing the edge of Ella's dress where it lay across my work table. The silk whispered under my touch like an old friend. A car horn blared outside Gloria's Uber, arriving with our first fabric delivery from Mood. Through the window, I saw bolts of Italian silk and French lace being unloaded, their price tags visible even from here. The twist came when Emily suddenly changed tactics. "I just want to help," she said, her voice softening in a way I hadn't heard since she was 16. "Maybe I could model some of your designs for your website." Gloria, now eavesdropping, openly mouthed, "Oh, hell no," while holding up a swatch of Duchess satin like a protest sign. "I appreciate the offer, sweetheart," I said, watching the delivery man struggle with a particularly large bolt of embroidered tulle. "But we've already got our first runway model, Ella's wearing my new collection, at the Portland Fashion Week charity gala next month." The silence on the line was so complete I could hear Mark murmuring in the background. "Fashion Week." Emily's voice jumped an octave. "Mom, that's sponsored by Nordstrom." Gloria called out helpfully, loud enough to be heard through the phone. "Front row seats are $2,500 each. Should we save you one?" Another pause. Then Emily's polished professional mask slipped back into place. "I'll have Mark's assistant check my calendar." As I hung up, Gloria collapsed into giggles. "Did we just turn down free labor from a Kensington?" She held up her phone where Emily's latest Instagram post showed her posing in front of some minimalist gallery. The caption read, "Curating what matters." "Not just any Kensington," I said, smoothing the silk for Ella's dress. "My daughter." The words carried both the ache and the acceptance of that truth. The doorbell rang. Betty Reynolds from Channel 7 arriving early with a camera crew. "Mrs. Barnes," she gushed, eyeing the fabric delivery with visible excitement. "We'd love to get footage of you at work. The public can't get enough of your story, the teacher who became an overnight sensation at 62. As I led them inside, my gaze caught on the cracked photo frame I'd never repaired, Emily's face still turned away, mine forever watching. Maybe some fractures weren't meant to be fixed. Maybe they were just part of the pattern. Gloria handed me a needle threaded with scarlet silk. "Ready for your close-up, boss." Outside, the delivery truck pulled away, revealing Mrs. Patterson walking her dog past our house for the third time today, this time stopping dead to gawk at the news van in my driveway. I waved at her through the window, my thimble glinting in the morning light like a tiny crown. Gloria's chopsticks froze mid-air, a noodle dangling like a question mark. "You mean, like a label?" I pulled a battered sketchbook from my shelf, one I hadn't opened since Emily left for college. Page after page of designs, spilled-out structured jackets with hidden pockets for single moms, wrap dresses that flattered post-mastectomy bodies, evening gowns with adjustable waistlines. "Barnes and Reed," I said. "Clothes for women who actually live in their bodies." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Ella, flushed and breathless, waving her phone. "Aunt Brie, the Portland Art Museum just called. They want your dress for their Pacific Northwest craftsmanship exhibit." She thrust her screen at us, where an email from the curator included the phrase, "important cultural artifact." Gloria made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Well, shit! Now we have to start this business." The twist came when my landline rang, the old rotary phone I kept for emergencies. Emily's voice was barely recognizable, stripped of its usual polish. "Mom, I need—" A shuddering breath. "Mark and I are separating." Silence pooled in the kitchen. Gloria quietly took Ella upstairs while I listened to the story spill out the prenup negotiations. Victoria had insisted on the suggestions about Emily's wardrobe and friends, the bank accounts monitored like a probation officer. "I thought it was normal," she whispered, "that this was just how successful families operated." I looked at the sketch in my hands, a trench coat with interior pockets sized for insulin pens and EpiPens. Real clothes for real lives. "Where are you now?" "Outside." I opened my front door to find Emily sitting on my porch steps in a wrinkled silk blouse, her wedding heels dangling from one hand. When she turned, I saw the tear tracks through her makeup, the same face she'd made at 6 when her goldfish died. She held up her other hand. A thimble glinted in her palm, the silver one I'd given her at 12 when she begged to learn to sew. "Think you could teach me again?" Upstairs, Gloria and Ella were already brainstorming names for our first collection. Rebellious elegance. No too pretentious, what about unapologetic? As I helped my daughter inside, the evening light caught the cracked photo frame on the wall. Without a word, Emily picked it up and turned it right side up, our faces reunited. Some patterns, it seemed, were meant to be remade. The morning light caught the pearls on Ella's dress, making them glow like tiny moons. I ran my fingers over the bodice, each stitch a rebellion against being told I was too old, too ordinary, too unimportant to matter. Gloria burst in, clutching 2 coffees and a stack of paperwork. "I stayed up all night," she said, thrusting a business plan at me. "We'll start small custom orders only. But look." She flipped to a page titled Phase 3, with sketches of a ready-to-wear line-tailored blazers with hidden phone pockets, wrap dresses with nursing access pants, with adjustable hems. For women who are tired of fashion that doesn't work for them. The doorbell rang. A deliveryman held out a package marked Mood Fabrics, Rush Order. "Funny," he said. "This address is getting more fabric than the design school downtown." As we unpacked bolts of emerald silk and cobalt wool, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Can I come by today? I brought coffee and a business proposal." Gloria groaned. "Let me guess, Mark wants to invest in exchange for creative control." But when Emily arrived, she carried not just coffee, but a battered sewing machine, the one I'd given her in high school. "I dug it out of storage," she said, setting it beside mine. Her hands shook slightly. "I was thinking, maybe I could help with the simpler seams while I figure out what comes next." The twist came when she opened her bag to reveal not designer fabrics, but stacks of handwritten notes. "These are from your former students," she said quietly. "I reached out to some of them after the news story aired. I recognized names from 30 years of teaching Mrs. Barnes. You made me believe I could create something beautiful. Your art class was the only reason I came to school. I still have the skirt you helped me sew in home EC. Emily's voice cracked. All these years, I thought you were just a teacher. But you were changing lives while I was chasing approval from people who'll never value me. She touched Ella's dress. Will you teach me how to make something real? Gloria squeezed my shoulder as I blinked back tears. Better make that ThreadWork and daughters, she whispered. Outside, Mrs. Patterson walked by yet again, this time stopping to peer at our new sign in the window. Now hiring all ages welcome. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't just nod politely. She came up the steps and asked, "You wouldn't happen to need a bookkeeper, would you? I'm tired of retirement." As the morning sun flooded the room, 3 generations of women bent over fabric swatches, our scissors glinting like promises. Some patterns aren't just meant to be remade, they're meant to grow. The camera panned to our first collection rack, where Ella's original dress stood center stage, now labeled the Revolution gown in elegant script. Gloria whooped as the segment ended with our website flashing across the screen, the counter showing our waitlist exploding in real time. My phone lit up like fireworks. Former students, neighbors, even the principal who'd forced me into early retirement, all texting variations of "I always knew you were meant for more." Then came the twist. A knock at the door revealed Victoria Kensington herself, standing stiffly in a Chanel suit that suddenly looked dated next to Gloria's bold hand-dyed wrap dress. "Brianna," she said, her smile tighter than a poorly set seam. "How quaint." Gloria stepped forward, arms crossed. "Victoria, did you get lost on your way to the country club?" Victoria ignored her, her gaze locking onto the TV where the news segment replayed. "Emily showed me your venture." She produced a check from her clutch with the flourish of someone expecting gratitude, a token toward something more appropriate than this hobby. I unfolded the check enough to cover 6 months' rent at our new downtown studio. The catch. The memo line read, "Consulting Services, Kensington Lifestyle Brands." Gloria snatched it, holding it up to the light like counterfeit cash. "Let me guess you want creative control, a refined aesthetic." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Every business needs structure. I took the check back, tore it cleanly in half, and handed it to her. ThreadWork isn't for sale. Unlike some, we value our integrity more than our Instagram following. Victoria's gasp was drowned out by Gloria's burst of laughter. As the door slammed behind her, Emily emerged from the kitchen holding 2 mugs of tea. "Sorry I'm late, had to park blocks away because of all the news vans." She glanced at the torn check on the floor. "Let me guess, mother-in-law's special." The 3 of us burst into laughter, the sound ringing through our makeshift headquarters. Outside, the neon ThreadWork sign paid for with our first 10 deposits flickered to life as dusk fell. Some revolutions begin with a bang. Ours began with a needle, a thread, and the quiet certainty that every woman's story deserves to be worn with pride. The silence on the line stretched so long, I could hear Emily's quickened breathing. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked like thin ice. I thought if you made it more commercial, you wouldn't get hurt again, like with the wedding dress." Gloria, eavesdropping while pretending to organize thread, dropped a spool of scarlet silk. It unraveled across the floor like a bleeding wound. "Emily," I said slowly, watching the crimson thread coil around my ankle, "you rejecting my dress didn't break me. What broke me was watching you become someone who values price tags over love." A choked sob came through the phone. Then the twist I never saw coming, the sound of a car engine starting. "I'm outside," Emily whispered. "Can I come up?" When I opened the studio door, my daughter stood there holding 2 things, her old sewing basket and a printed email from Mark's lawyer titled Prenup Enforcement Procedures. Her left cheek bore the faintest red mark in the shape of a ring. Gloria took one look and reached for her keys. "I'll get the good whiskey from upstairs." Emily touched her face absently. "Not what you think. Victoria slapped me when I said I was investing in ThreadWork instead of Mark's new venture." Her laugh was raw. "Turns out, Kensington women don't start businesses with seamstresses is an actual family bylaw. I pulled her inside my fingers, finding the exact right pressure points along her shoulders, the same way I'd eased her tension before high school dances. "We have a spare sewing machine," I said. As Gloria poured 3 generous glasses, Emily unfolded blueprints for our storefront, but with her architectural flourishes added a children's play corner for moms, getting fitted a comfort wall of stretch fabrics for clients with mobility issues. "If you'll have me," she said, tracing the design with shaking fingers, "I'd like to be the third partner, not as a Kensington, as your daughter." Outside, the neon ThreadWork sign buzzed to life, casting a pink glow over the tear-streaked blueprints. Some patterns take generations to perfect. Some seams only grow stronger where they were once torn. Gloria raised her glass. "To unconventional beginnings." Emily clinked hers against mine, the sound ringing clear through our future. The morning of Mrs. Abernathy's final fitting, a package arrived from Paris, a box of vintage lace from Joy Cavuto, with a note, "For your next masterpiece." P.S. Tell Gloria the documentary crew arrives Monday. Gloria whooped, nearly toppling a dress form. "We're getting the cinema verite treatment, baby." But the real twist came when Emily walked in, carrying 2 coffees and a stack of legal papers. "I filed for divorce yesterday," she said, setting them on the cutting table. The top page showed the Kensington name being struck through with such force the pen had torn the paper. Mrs. Abernathy, still in her half-pinned dress, reached out and squeezed Emily's hand. "Honey, at my age you learn some seams need ripping out before you can sew them right." Emily's laugh was watery. "I was thinking, maybe I could help with the business side. I may not know French seams, but I did get a Harvard MBA before Mark convinced me playing wife was more impressive." She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "I redesigned your website, added e-commerce for accessory kits, virtual consultations, even a Stitch and Bitch podcast studio in the back room." Gloria snatched the drive like it was the Hope Diamond. "Brie, say yes before she changes her mind." I looked at my daughter, really looked for the first time in years. The dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders relaxed in our messy, fabric-strewn studio, the defiant spark returning to her gaze. Threading a needle with emerald silk, I handed it to her. Lesson 1. The strongest seams are invisible from the outside. As Mrs. Abernathy's grandson arrived to collect her, he froze in the doorway. "Grandma, you look..." "Like myself," she finished spinning to make the skirt flare. "Only better." Outside, snow began falling on our ThreadWork sign, the flakes catching the light like scattered seed pearls. Some stories don't end, they just take a different shape. And sometimes the most beautiful creations come from learning to mend what others thought was beyond repair. The morning the article dropped, I arrived at the studio to find a crowd outside, women holding steaming coffee cups, some with their mothers, a few even cradling vintage sewing machines like talismans. At the front stood a silver-haired woman in a power wheelchair, her lap piled with colorful fabric swatches. "We're your 9 a.m. appointment," she announced. "The Portland Sewing Collective, 18 members strong, and we all want to invest in ThreadWork." Gloria nearly dropped her keys. "Invest as in we pooled our retirement funds," the woman said, producing a cashier's check that made my knees weak. Turns out being obsolete makes us excellent at spotting real value. The twist came when Emily rushed in her phone, buzzing wildly. "Mom, don't panic!" The door crashed open. Victoria Kensington stormed in, her usually perfect hair disheveled, clutching a copy of the magazine. "How dare you humiliate our family like this?" she shrieked, jabbing at the blurred photo of Emily. The Sewing Collective gasped. The documentary crew, sensing gold, zoomed in. I stepped forward, my pincushion bracelet glinting. "Victoria, meet our new investors." I gestured to the silver-haired woman whose name I'd just learned was Harriet Stein, former CFO of Nordstrom. "Harriet, this is the woman who called my life's work rustic." Harriet's wheelchair whirred forward. "Ah, the tastemaker." Her voice dripped acid. "Tell me, dear, how many stitches have you sewn in your life?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Emily, hiding a smile, handed her a business card. ThreadWork is expanding to Seattle next year, Victoria. We'd be happy to dress you at full retail. As Victoria sputtered, Harriet rolled to our inspiration wall and pinned up a new sketch, a bold pantsuit with adaptive closures. First collection piece, ladies. We'll call it the Revenge Dress. The studio erupted in laughter and applause. Outside, the neon sign flickered brighter, as if sensing the shift. Some revolutions begin with a whimper. Ours began with a needle, a thread, and 18 women who refused to be erased. That night, as I locked up, Emily stayed behind. "Mom," she said quietly, holding out her old thimble, "think you could teach me how to sew a proper French seam?" The first snow of winter began falling as we bent over the machine together, our heads nearly touching, the past and future stitched together at last. The bell above the door jingled, and Emily looked up from steaming a gown, her hands now calloused from months at the iron. "Well, well," she said, setting it aside. "Look who finally decided to visit." Haley stood frozen in the doorway, her designer boots leaving damp prints on the floor we'd stained with our own hands. Her gaze darted from the wall of client testimonials to the documentary crew filming in the corner, finally landing on me at my sewing machine. I didn't rise, just kept stitching the hem of Harriet Stein's Revenge Dress, the emerald silk, whispering through my fingers. "Mom," Haley began, then stopped when the silver bell rang again. Harriet herself wheeled in, followed by 3 members of the sewing collective, carrying garment bags. Brie, the adaptive wear samples are, oh. She took in the scene, then smirked. "Ah, the prodigal daughter returns." Haley's face flushed. "I just came to apologize," Emily suggested, sweetly adjusting the mannequin wearing the Revolution gown. The twist came when Haley reached into her bag and pulled out a familiar ivory garment the Vera Wang she'd worn instead of mine. "Actually," she said, her voice steadier than I'd heard in years, "I came to ask if you could remake this into something that actually fits me." The studio fell silent. Even the documentary crew stopped filming. Emily was the first to move, taking the dress with careful hands. "The construction is terrible," she murmured, examining the seams. "Look how they cut corners on the boning." Haley met my eyes. "I thought it was supposed to be the best." Harriet snorted. "The most expensive isn't always the best, sweetheart. Just ask anyone who's ever overpaid for bad wine." I stood slowly, my knees protesting after hours at the machine. "Why now?" Hallie's fingers twisted the strap of her bag, the same nervous habit she'd had since kindergarten. "Because I finally realized I'd rather wear something made with love than something bought for status." She gestured to the studio. "And because you built all this without anyone's permission." Gloria, ever the peacemaker, handed Haley a tape measure. "Well, you staying or just visiting?" Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the street in quiet possibility. Inside, 3 generations of women bent over a single dress scissors, flashing in the winter light, the past unraveling stitch by stitch to make room for what came next. Some mending jobs take a lifetime. But as Haley's laughter mingled with Emily's over a tangled thread, I realized the strongest seams are the ones that hold even after being torn apart. I smoothed the silver silk under my hands, the beads catching the light like tiny warnings. "Forgiveness isn't a performance for cameras, Emily. It's not a PR strategy." Harriet wheeled closer, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Funny how you only showed up after the magazine feature and documentary deal." Emily Haley flinched at the use of her childhood nickname. "That's not the truth." Gloria finished, arms crossed. "Because from where we're standing, you treated your mom like an embarrassment until ThreadWork became trendy." The studio door burst open, letting in a flurry of snow, and Malene Wilson herself, her camera crew, in tow. "Haley, perfect timing. We were just about to film your reunion." The twist came when Haley turned not to the cameras, but to the garment bag Emily was holding, the rejected Vera Wang. "Actually," she said, her voice trembling, "we were about to remake this together. As a family." Malene's eyes lit up. "Even better. Authentic reconciliation through craft." I stood slowly, my scissors hanging from their ribbon like a pendulum. No, the room froze. Even the snow outside seemed to pause mid-fall. Haley's face crumpled. "Mom, please, not like this," I said, cutting the silver thread with finality. "Not for cameras or magazine spreads or to fix your reputation." I took the garment bag from Emily and hung it gently on the rack. "If you want to learn, come back tomorrow at 6 a.m. when we open. Bring coffee and your thimble." Malene started to protest, but Harriet cut her off. "Pack up, honey. This isn't your story to tell." As the crew shuffled out, Haley stood perfectly still the way she had as a child, waiting to see if a storm would pass or break. Emily broke the silence, tossing Haley a tape measure. "Better learn to sew fast, sis. Our adaptive wear line debuts in 3 weeks." Outside, the snow began falling harder, erasing footprints on the sidewalk. Inside, the hum of sewing machines started up again, the sound of women writing their own endings, one stubborn stitch at a time. Some reconciliations take more than tears or cameras. They take showing up before dawn, needle in hand, ready to do the work. And as Haley quietly picked up a spool of thread from the floor, I realized the most beautiful mending often begins with unraveling first. This was a movement, and she was standing on the wrong side of history. Haley's designer heels clicked across the floor as she moved to our inspiration board, where photos of real women in our designs mingled with fabric swatches and Emily's bold business plans. Her fingers hovered over a newspaper clipping, "ThreadWork named Portland's most innovative startup." "You really built all this," she murmured more to herself than to us. Gloria, ever the strategist, saw the opening. "We're launching a mentorship program next month," she said casually. "Teaching sewing skills to foster teens. Could use someone with an MBA to structure the curriculum." Haley's head snapped up. You'd trust me with that." The twist came not from me, but from Emily, who appeared in the doorway holding 2 steaming mugs. "Only if you promise not to suggest synthetic blends," she said, handing one to Haley. "Mom's allergic to polyester." The ghost of a smile touched Haley's lips as she took the mug chamomile, the same tea I'd made her during childhood nightmares. "I think I'm starting to understand why," she said quietly. Outside, the snow had stopped leaving the street glittering under the ThreadWork sign. Inside, 4 women stood in uneasy truce, not yet healed, but no longer bleeding. I picked up my shears and a length of emerald silk. "Class starts at 6 a.m., I said without looking up. "Don't be late." Haley set down her untouched tea, squared her shoulders, and walked out into the winter afternoon. But this time, she left something behind her designer handbag, slung carelessly over a chair, like she intended to return. Gloria exhaled loudly. "Well, that was just the beginning." Emily finished already sketching adaptive designs on the back of an invoice. I bent over my cutting table, the silk whispering promises under my hands. Some patterns take generations to perfect. Some seams only grow stronger where they were once torn. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most beautiful creations come from learning to mend what others thought was beyond repair. The bell above the door jingled again. Our first afternoon client had arrived, her arms full of fabric and hope. "Ready to make magic?" I asked, pushing my glasses up my nose. Because that's what we did here. Not just sew dresses, but stitch together broken dreams, one rebellious thread at a time. The morning light spilled through my studio windows, illuminating the ivory silk spread across my work table, fresh, unmarked, full of promise. I ran my fingers over the fabric, feeling its potential. This new dress wouldn't carry the weight of rejection, but the joy of a bride who'd sought me out after reading Ella's story in Vogue. Gloria burst in with 2 coffees and the morning paper. "Brie, look." She flipped open to the style section where a full-page ad announced ThreadWork Mentorship Program. Applications now open. Below it, in elegant script read, Director of Operations, Emily Kensington Barnes. I nearly dropped my shears. "When did—" "Last night," Gloria grinned. "Your girl showed up at my apartment with a 50-page business plan and tears in her eyes. Said she's done letting other people tell her who to be." The twist came when the bell jingled and Haley walked in, not in her usual designer sheath, but in jeans and a ThreadWork t-shirt Emily had designed. "I'm here for my 6 a.m. lesson," she said, holding out a coffee and a worn thimble. "If the offer still stands." Emily appeared from the back room, her arms full of muslin samples. "You're late," she said, but her smile took the sting out. "Start by organizing the thread wall. Color spectrum order, not by brand like some amateur." As Haley set to work grumbling good-naturedly about nepotism, Harriet wheeled in with her usual flair. "Well, well," she said, taking in the scene. "Nothing like a family business to make retirement interesting." Outside, the first clients of the day began arriving, a group of foster teens for our inaugural sewing class, their faces alight with curiosity. One girl, maybe 16 with pink-streaked hair, touched Ella's framed photo. "Did you really make this?" she asked in awe. I handed her a needle threaded with gold. "Why don't you help me start the new one?" The studio hummed to life around us, Gloria negotiating with a fabric supplier, Emily explaining business plans to Haley Harriet, teaching the teens how to hold scissors properly, and me at the center of it, all tracing the first cut into fresh silk. Some stories don't end with neat hems or perfect closures. The best ones keep unfolding messy and beautiful, like fabric tumbling from a bolt full of possibility, one stitch at a time. Life. The scissors whispered through the silk as I cut the first piece, a bodice that would hug her curves, like an embrace with seams strong enough to withstand any storm. Gloria leaned over my shoulder, her finger tracing the sketch I'd made at 3 a.m. "Hidden pockets," she asked. "For her grandmother's handkerchief," I said, "and her divorce decree." The studio buzzed around us, Haley laughing with our teen mentees as she untangled a snarled thread. Emily on the phone negotiating our Seattle lease, Harriet holding court in the fitting room with clients who'd become friends. The documentary crew, now a permanent fixture, captured it all, the messy, glorious reality of women rebuilding themselves, stitch by stitch. As I pinned the first dart, the bride-to-be arrived early for her fitting, her eyes wide as she took in the bustling studio. "I can't believe I get to wear a Brie Barnes original," she breathed. I handed her a spool of thread. "You're not just wearing it, darling. You're helping create it. Because that's what we did here at ThreadWork, turned wounds into wisdom, rejection into revolution, and every you can't into watch me. Some patterns aren't just sewn. They're lived." And as the morning light gilded our needles, I realized the most beautiful designs are the ones that leave room to grow.